So today is Wednesday, April 3rd. And this in-service is pretty much the result of that meeting that we held back in February, where we looked at our test results with students and kind of chose an area that we all want to focus on with instruction. Oh, I forgot to grab my clicker. So this presentation, we're gonna go over 3 different strategies for improving reading comprehension, specifically with informational text. All right, so as a warm-up, I want you all, or one of you, to define for me what is a main idea out of text? How would you describe it?
The who, what, when, and where of the story.
Okay.
Wait, more? The
Sure.
gist, like what exactly is the story or the piece talking about?
All right. Okay. So if we're thinking of like a recent passage from class, so maybe the social studies textbook, how do you as a reader go about identifying the main idea of a passage? What are the cues that you're looking for when you're thinking of the main idea of a text?
Title.
Okay.
The chapter.
Well, or also too, if you were gonna do like a graphic organizer of it, what would you put in that big main bubble? And then, what are the details that would shoot off from there?
Okay, so you're already doing kind of like a text map in
Yeah.
your brain.
Yeah.
All right. So why is this something that our students struggle with? Well, we have a couple of reasons. So first, our students often lack the self-regulation skills that you need to monitor comprehension while reading. There are also reading difficulties present. So if our students are having reading deficits, they're dedicating their cognitive load to decoding or to reading with fluency also. So they're not devoting enough attention to comprehension, therefore they miss out on the main idea. They read a whole passage, they can't, and they often say, I don't know what I just read. Also, students may not have learned comprehension strategies, or they may be unable to apply those reading strategies independently. So the strategies that we're going to look at today, I selected them because all of the research that I found, they were utilized with students with learning disabilities. They address self-regulation skills, and they're strategies that can be applied across content areas. So next we're gonna look at the data briefly that we've already discussed. We'll go over the 3 key strategies, which include text structure, instruction, something called TRAP, which I'll explain, and get the gist, which you specifically mentioned, what's the gist of what we read. And then we'll also talk about how to apply the strategies using technology. That's why you all have your laptops with you today. So we looked at our ERB milestones results, and we all found that our students struggle most with explicit information. We found that only 54% of our students are reading at or above proficiency with informational text. There's also a specific domain of explicit information that was an area of struggle. Using explicit information to identify the main idea or primary purpose of a text or a part of a text, we're at 49% proficiency with our students. And that was concerning that many students are struggling with identifying the main idea after reading an informational passage. Our students are getting ready for middle school. They need to be prepared for those rich texts that they need to learn from. We also discussed some classroom observations. So we identified informational writing as a common challenge among our students. Writing about reading is a challenge also. And in general, comprehension of nonfiction text. So like I said earlier, our students might read a passage, we ask them what it was about, and they might say, I have no idea what I just read. It's big, you don't want to hear that. So the goal for today is that you all will leave here with 3 strategies that you can apply in your classroom to develop your students' comprehension of expository texts by identifying the main idea and then writing about what they've read. So all of these kind of feature, aspects of identifying the main idea, working and analyzing with text, and then sharing what they've learned through writing. So the first example we're going to talk about is text structure analysis. Text structure analysis teaches students how to analyze how text is organized in a passage. Text structure is the way an author organizes information for a specific purpose for the audience. It incorporates text mapping, which is using a graphic organizer that prompts students to analyze text and organize text features. The 5 most common text structures are sequence, description, comparison, problem solution, and cause and effect. So what are the benefits of this strategy? First of all, it's applicable across content areas. It can work for reading multi-step instructions in math or reading a word problem. It can show up in science, especially when I think of cause and effect. And it can come up in social studies too, when we're learning about ancient cultures. It prepares students for more complex informational texts at the middle school level. Being able to recognize common organizational patterns in informational text may provide students with the cognitive frameworks to organize complex vocabulary and content encountered with reading. It's also aligned to Common Core standards. Now, we've discussed that we don't use Common Core standards, we don't use the Georgia Standards of Excellence, but the standards that we do use also incorporate understanding or comprehending informational text that present in a variety of structures. So it's an important skill for our students as they are moving all the way through middle and high school, as they're working alongside their peers in other settings. So expository text, it's also difficult for students because some of its features. It features academic and technical vocabulary. I know we see that a lot in social studies. A high density of facts and unfamiliar content. So we don't have that background knowledge that students can very easily call upon with informational text. Explicit instruction in text structure provides students a mental framework to organize the information as they read to learn. So if they understand the structure and the purpose, it helps prepare them to actually take in and understand that complex information. It supports students with prior knowledge while reading because it gives them that structure that they can rely on. They know that they're going into a cause and effect reading. It makes the comprehension piece a lot more natural and they're prepared for it. Studies show that students who receive instruction in text structure performed better on reading comprehension assessments than students who did not. In text structure instruction, like I mentioned before, it can apply across genres, and it can be easily integrated into a daily classroom routine. You can do one of these lessons in 10 to 15 minutes once you've kind of mastered it and introduced it. So this is how you get started with text structure instruction. First, to prepare for the lesson, you're going to want to select appropriate reading material that is relevant and challenging while still being accessible to students. You also want to start with well-structured passages when beginning text structure instruction. So picking a passage that you know is cause and effect, or you know is a problem solution right off the bat. Plan how to activate prior knowledge with students before reading and identify the domain-specific vocabulary words that will need to be previewed or discussed while reading. You'll then transition into the direct instruction where you will launch the lesson by stating the lesson objective and displaying the text structure, the text map and structure guide. I'm going to show you an example of that in a little while. And the students will be using that map and that guide while they are reading. You're then ready to model. So this is where you will read out loud to the class and you will identify any new vocabulary words in the passage for the students while in that context of reading. You're also going to want to pause to narrate your thinking. Like I mentioned before, our students, they often lack that self-regulation skill of really thinking while reading and how they're building their understanding. So it's important for the teacher to really narrate those connections being drawn. So this is the example of the text map and structure. I'm just gonna walk over, make it a little more clear. So over here we have the definition of those 5 different structures. We have the elements and some guiding questions. So the questions that you'll ask yourself as a reader during your modeling. So if you're reading a compare and contrast text, you might narrate your thinking of what is the same, how are Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt alike? and how are they different? These are the different maps that you can use. So we have a Venn diagram, cause and effect, that sort of mental map that you were talking about earlier that you do as a reader. We'll have our students do on paper. Signal words and phrases. So this is a great resource because students can look for these directly in their text, identify them as they read, and that can kind of build in that structure for them. And then different structure partners. So sure, we have compare and contrast, but we might be comparing and contrasting problems. If you're doing a passage on, global warming, and you're looking at different examples of renewable energy, you might be doing compare and contrast, the benefits and the drawbacks of those different solutions for global warming. And then this comes into, those identifying words come into play in the next step, which is student input and a second reading. So at this point, you've already read the passage aloud with your students, and it's time for you to prompt the students to share what the main idea of the text is using the resource guide. You may also want to verbalize how the students would go about finding the author's purpose by asking out loud, is the author trying to inform me, persuade me, or presenting facts to inform me, to kind of identify those three different structures. Then you'll want to create an author's purpose using that main idea that the students have put together. So if you're reading a paragraph about the three branches of government and you've identified that the author is trying to inform you, you may want to then say, okay, so the author is informing me or informing the audience about the three branches of government. Then it's time for a second reading, where you can underline and annotate signal words from the resource guide or synonyms for the signal words. So if you go back and you have that guide up, you can kind of model highlighting or underlining those signal words. And then finally, you would show a complete text structure map. So here's an example of a completed text structure map. It's a cause and effect of U.S. immigration policy. So it involves a list of the events, the factors, the big idea, and then all the details. The students are then ready to move on to guided work. So in guided practice, students work in pairs with a piece of text and use their resource guide to create an author's purpose statement, annotate the text for signal words, answer guided questions, and finally create a text map. Eventually, resources like the guided questions and signal words can be removed. Finally, it's important for the teacher to offer feedback. So these are two examples of different rubrics. This one rates on a scale from 0 to 5. And this one is on a scale from 0 to 4. And this one includes a little feedback section. So I think that this one's probably a better fit if you're actually grading like a writing statement because of the feedback. All right, so now we're going to talk about incorporating technology, and we're going to talk about ReadWorks. So ReadWorks is a fantastic platform that features a lot of informational passages. It features text-to-speech. You can search by grade level or Lexile level. It includes previewing vocabulary activities and comprehension questions. So those comprehension questions can be assigned as an express set or a full set. It's also very Google Classroom friendly. It also includes book studies. So when I was on ReadWorks looking for things for today, I found book studies. So for example, there was an informational article that was connected to the book Esperanza Rising. So before reading the book, the fictional book, you can introduce that article through ReadWorks. So we're gonna go to readworks.org right now. Trying to figure out how to, I can just do that over here. Oh, I didn't bring my keyboard over with me, but we're gonna go to readworks.org. So you'll be able to log in, and you're gonna go through the educator portal. Let me grab my keyboard. That's better. You'll be able to sign in with Google. So here is kind of your home base. Let's start by looking at the content section. So if you look through content type, there are a lot of different types. This is the thing I was mentioning before, book studies. And then there's also the activity type. So full question set, express question. If you want your students to work on inferencing skills while also working on these other comprehension skills, you can look specifically for text that features inferencing. There is also a text structure question set. So if I select this, it's gonna show me all these passages that have that text structure feature kind of embedded. And you can even search by cause and effect, plot structure, sequence. I'm gonna unselect it just to show you a little bit more. Here are the different grade levels. You can also do it by topic, so you can look for social studies only if that's what you want. We do a lot of geography and world history, so we may want to look in there for a social studies passage. This is where you can filter by text, text type, nonfiction or fiction. Here you can see, oh, here's the Esperanza Rising passage that I was mentioning. There's also one for Bud Not Buddy. There's a lot like that. You can do it by word count. You can search by lexile level. There are a lot of ways that this is made, easy and straightforward for teachers, which is great. Once you open a passage, let's actually go back to that Esperanza Rising one. There is an audio read aloud. So if we want our students to do it on their own, but we want them to have that backup of audio, they can hit play on that. Before they begin reading, you can do the vocabulary activities. So they select a couple of words that are important for readers. You can also, pick your own for sure. So for example, advocate and diversity. The students can listen to it read out loud so they know how it sounds. They can rate their familiarity with the word. And then there's the word changer activity down here too. Great for building background knowledge. Within the passage, students can highlight, this had an annotating feature. I'll have to double check that. I thought when I was doing this at home it did have an annotation feature. Yeah, that's so strange. When I did it at home, I think an annotating feature showed up, but that's okay. Let's look at the question sets. So this one features full and express. A full question set often looks like it's several multiple choice questions, usually like about 7 multiple choice questions, and then 2 or 3 written answer questions. The express set is usually just 5 multiple choice questions, so if you just want a quick comprehension check, you can do that. Oh, this is how you're gonna highlight it. So if you wanna go into present mode, see, it says highlights and annotations. There it is. Okay, so if you're in present mode, you can do different, colors. You can make a little note to yourself, things like that. See, I knew they had it. You can also easily print it out. If you are just researching and you want to collect some passages, you can hit this save button and it saves it to a list for you. Here you hit the assign button and you can assign which activities you want them to do. You can also hold back on that audio feature if you don't want them to have it. This probably won't look exactly, yeah. So the next thing that you can do before you assign is if you go to class admin, you can create a class or you can import from Google Classroom. And when you import from Google Classroom, you can select, and then once you do the import feature, I just didn't do that because I didn't want it, muddying, like showing up in the Google Classroom as I was playing around with it. Kids rushing to like do the assessment for me. You can also arrange groups. So if I know that sometimes we mix up for like different reading groups and things like that. So once all the students are imported, you can, make groups of those students if your class structure changes, but your Google Classroom doesn't. Another great feature is if you go to assignment and progress, it's gonna show you all of the assignments that you've assigned, and then student progress. Obviously, I don't have anyone in here right now, but what's gonna show up is a score chart. So it's gonna show, how Johnny did on the passage I assigned this week, and that week. So you can kind of see if your instruction is working and if they're progressing in the comprehension questions. Do we have any questions about ReadWorks or text structure? Go ahead.
So it looks like when you first sign up for it, that they either ask for donation, or is it free? Like
Oh, it's free.
Everything, okay.
Mm-hmm.
There
Yeah.
was a box that
Yeah.
popped up for asking for donations
Oh.
before, but, I was just wondering if you had to pay some to get like the full access to it, or if everything is free.
No, I've used this in a reading class that I taught last year, and I was able to access all of the features.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the presentation. That's gonna be trouble. Yeah, so go back to the beginning, of course. All right. So the next structure is TRAP and SRSD. So TRAP stands for Think Before Reading, Read a Paragraph, Ask what is the main idea or important details, and then paraphrase the paragraph. It is an SRSD instructional method or self-regulated strategy development. So SRSD is explicit instruction in self-regulation strategies that can be applied to various academic areas. We know our students struggle with self-regulation strategies all over the place, and this is kind of an academic model that they can sort of address. They can use these strategies to address them elsewhere. When planning for an SRSD instruction, there are 4 components to have in mind. So that's goal setting, self-monitoring, self-instruction, and self-reinforcement. And then within SRSD, you kind of take the students through 6 stages, where it's develop and activate background knowledge, discuss the strategy, model the strategy, memorize it, scaffold the strategy, and independent practice. And the steps can be retaught or reordered, so if students are struggling in any particular area and you want to devote more attention to it, you can do that and it will still be effective. So why do it? As I mentioned before, SRSD instruction can benefit students academically, socially, and emotionally because of that reinforcement of self-regulation strategies. When students are introduced to an SRSD strategy, they can apply it to other academic contexts. Students who participated in TRAP instruction improved their performance on oral retell skills and short answer questions after reading a passage. TRAP also promotes proven reading strategies like developing a purpose for reading, using background knowledge and text features to improve understanding. So this is how you get started with this instructional model. The first thing you need to do is discuss with students why it is helpful to have a strategy while reading. You then want to give students a pre-assessment on a passage that they've already read so they can kind of see their baseline. And then something that was done in one of these studies is that the students actually graphed their scores, and seeing their scores develop over time was very reinforcing for the participants. So that's something that you can feature here as well. And then it kind of informs a comprehension goal for the students, and it gives them, that visual cue and that visual reminder. In order to model the strategy, you can use a graphic organizer to share your thinking with the students. Show how you would think about reading. So demonstrate previewing the text for headers, vocabulary words, helpful images. Again, these are things that we all mentioned when we talked about how you find the main idea of a passage. And then you move on to read the passage out loud. And again, we're verbalizing our thoughts while we're reading, verbalizing how we draw those connections that we're always thinking about and then talking about it. Asking and answering the question, what is the passage mostly about? And then using the main idea and some details to answer that question. And then the final step is to paraphrase the passage based on that previous answer. So we're kind of building throughout while reading. Students are then ready for independent practice. So you want to allow the students to work in small groups or partners, reading an article together. They should fill out their graphic organizer as they work. Another strategy that was mentioned in an article is simply writing TRAP at the top of the paper. So once students are comfortable and familiar with the steps, kind of transitioning them or gradually releasing them away from those other resources. So while the students are working together on that graphic organizer and while they're reading, the teacher, you, would circulate the room to clear up misunderstandings or provide positive feedback for correct application. Then you're going to provide comprehension questions for students to answer after reading. I think ReadWorks would be a great resource for this as well, but we are also going to look at a different website in a moment. And this would be an opportunity where students can also use those graphs that we talked about. So here's an example that I made on Canva, where students would just write their name, the title of what they're reading, and then sort of fill out as they go some of their thoughts. So to incorporate technology, we're going to take a look at News ELA. So News ELA is a collection of articles and passages. What they do is they take articles from a reputable source and create adjustable lexile levels. And then within that, they embed a lot of activities. I remember when I first learned about News ELA when I was student teaching, I think every time I go back to it, there's another new feature to it. So annotation, pre-reading polls, they point out vocabulary words, and they provide comprehension questions. So we are going to go to News ELA. Am I not? Oh, no, I'm recording. Okay. Oh my goodness. To figure out how to get back there without having to click through all the slides again. So it's newsela.com and you'll hit login. It's another sign in with Google. Yes, we're recording, okay. The red button shows up like I never pressed it. So this is what the homepage looks like. It shows you some of the latest news, different reading challenges for the month, important events, and some of the features. Well, we're gonna start by going to, so the browse area is where you can sort by subject area. You can also find articles in Spanish if you have any language learners later on. Your content is where you can find things that are saved by you. So when we did our Egypt project, I saved and made a text structure.
Yeah, that's great.
Or a text set, where I just saved a bunch of articles on ancient Egypt. And this was the test one, so it only has one in here. So we'll take a look at the article. So here's an example of one of the articles I saved for the students. One of the first things you'll see is this adjustable lexile level. So it's set to 930, but you can also increase it or take it down for students. This is where you can simply, print out the article, decide if you want to do it on paper. And before you begin, they present you with an option for a student poll. So how familiar are you with the topic? So News ELA does a lot of activating background knowledge. You can also go to other polls that they've created. So do you think you will connect to the information in this article? Have you heard of this topic before? If you want to change the wording. Or you can start from scratch and make your own poll for students. And as you can see, this is they give you the source too, so you know it's coming from. Once you get started, you can see that there are some words in blue and some words in green. So the blue words are the domain-specific words, where they provide students with a student-friendly definition. The green ones are the power-up words. So think of, tier 2 academic vocabulary, or there's called power words. Power words you cannot turn off, but these words you can. So if you don't want students to be able to see the definition, you want evidence that they already know it, you can disable that feature. I am going to show what it looks like when I change. So this is 930 Lexile, we'll take it down to 570. You can see the word count goes down, things get much more simple and straightforward. You can also use the present feature if you're showing it for the class and you want just a larger screen. Another great resource is they have the annotation feature, so you can highlight and you can annotate. You can change the color, you can make a note, change the text size for students. There's an audio feature here as well. And then when you want to assign it, this is what I'm looking for, sorry. They've actually just started partnering with Formative. So you can assign the activities through Formative if you don't want to use the New ZLA platform. So it still has the article in here, or if you want them to, not be able to navigate out of it, because I know Formative can do that. You can answer the questions in Formative, which is pretty great.
That's a neat feature.
Yeah, that one was new to me. And then there's this reading skills focus. So this kind of previews for you what the questions go over, so what the text says, connecting people, events, and ideas. And these are the different activities. So let's say you don't want to do the student poll, you can just disable it here. If you don't want them to do the writing prompt, you can disable it here. If you want to see the writing prompt though, you can just hit view. So this is the prompt here is what is the main idea of the text, which is perfect for us today. But they also have different prompts that you can hit refresh and they're AI generated, but you can also hit the edit button and come up with your own. And then this is the quiz that you can assign. So these quizzes are short, they just have 4 questions, but they're all standards aligned. Give the students a straightforward percentage score, so that's good for that scoring feature that we talked about, or the graphing the scores that we talked about. There's a handy review button down here. It makes it really easy to organize the students' work for you to grade it. And it's also very Google Classroom friendly. If I want to assign this, I can title it, I can do assign to a class, or just like in ReadWorks, I can assign to a small group. My Google Classroom is already embedded, so I can do it like that. Small group is going to show me all my students, so I'm not going to pull up those names. Here's where you can set the Lexile score. If you don't want students to be able to change the Lexile level, you don't want to give them that option, you can turn this off. And once you do that, you can hide the level from students. Some students might feel a little self-conscious about needing a lower Lexile level, so if you don't want them to have to worry about that, you can hide it. You can type instructions here. Here you can, so for example, reveal quiz answers to students after submission. If you don't want to do that, if you want to see it yourself first, these are all the different options that you have. This is where you select your activities. You can schedule the assignment, you can save it, and you can duplicate it and assign it to multiple classes. You may actually be able to, yeah, you can assign it to multiple classes right off the bat actually. If you're just browsing for content, you just find something that you like. This is how you make a text set, just like I did for social studies. Well, first of all, they have some embedded text sets. So if you are looking for articles on ancient Egypt, you can find text sets like the one I made on ancient Egypt. If you are just looking for an article, here, and you're browsing and you just want to keep it in your pocket for later, you just hit the save button. That's that's how you save it, and then once you get to your content, that's where you can, create a text set. Okay, let me see if there's a better way for me to restart the PowerPoint. From current slide, okay. Do we have any questions about TRAP or about New ZLA?
Great.
No, but you are a great resource.
Yeah.
You found all that for our Egypt project, that was amazing.
Good,
A
yeah.
lot of kids.
I remember Jen, you liked this. When you were there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we used to use it.
Yeah. I've used
Used to use it a
ReadWorks
lot
before,
more.
and it
Yeah.
was very effective.
But they kind of seem similar.
Yeah.
But I
So
like,
I think ReadWorks is a little bit easier to navigate as a teacher, to be honest. New
Yeah.
ZLA has a lot of features, and that can be overwhelming to kind of sort through. Like when I logged on this year, there were all sorts of new features, like the formative thing, that was new to me. There are all sorts of new features, while ReadWorks is a little bit more straightforward. And I think it's a little bit more predictable in what like the students can see and have access to. I feel like with New ZLA, sometimes you're like, did I assign this, did I not assign it, can they see their lifestyle level? Well, ReadWorks is a bit more, what you put there is what you put there, and that's all they get. Yeah, and then I included links to video tutorials of me going through the websites, so if you wanted to reference those later, you can. The next strategy is called Get the Gist. Get the Gist is a paraphrasing strategy. Students determine who or what the section is about, identify the most important details, and then they write a main idea statement. Get the Gist is a CSR, or a collaborative reading strategy. CSR is a reading comprehension model that combines explicit instruction with student-led discussion. In Get the Gist, students determine who or what the section is about, identify the most important details about who or what the section is about, and then they use that information to write a main idea statement. So some of the benefits of this strategy, Get the Gist promotes background knowledge and vocabulary development, two key features that we've been hitting on a lot today with these strategies. Get the Gist provides explicit practice in identifying the main ideas in a text, which is an important skill in reading comprehension. It supports students with reading disabilities who struggle with actively processing while reading. We have students with deficits in working memory, so Get the Gist is very beneficial for that. And then distinguishing between important and unimportant details in a text. Studies also show that after learning CSR strategies, including Get the Gist, struggling readers were better able to identify a purpose for reading before reading. They could better actively monitor their comprehension during reading, and they could ask questions about text after reading. Get the Gist can also easily be combined with text structure instruction. The first resource that I found as I was researching Get the Gist and text structure instruction actually had them embedded in this really great article. It was a little bit briefer, so it went over just the 3 main common text structures instead of 5, but it is one of those strategies that you can kind of, all these strategies are really related, but text structure instruction and Get the Gist can really go hand in hand and elevate the comprehension instruction. So to begin, you're going to need to choose an age-appropriate reading passage, of course. So we looked at ReadWorks, we looked at New ZLA, again, great resources for the Get the Gist strategy as well. Make sure to consider background knowledge or vocabulary words needed to be pre-taught for students' understanding when they encounter them in the passage. You'll want to divide the passage at stopping points ahead of instruction. So consider stopping after chunks of 3 sentences or 4, 5 sentences. 5 is probably the max where you'd want to stop and kind of do the narrating, the thinking. You'll also want to introduce Get the Gist and explicitly define a main idea with the students. It can be kind of an abstract concept for students and hard to identify what that really means. They tend to get caught up in the details, a little bit overwhelmed, so that's a great way to prepare them for this. For struggling readers, this is where text structure instruction comes in. So you may want to teach fix-up strategies for the students when there's a comprehension breakdown. So for example, encouraging students to reread that section of text, identifying headers, helpful images, captions, or identifying the text structure. So that's where you would kind of go into these different structures for text. The next portion is think alouds and modeling. So you would want to provide students with an anchor chart that features those main 2 steps for get the gist. I'll show you an anchor chart in just a moment. You would then read the chosen passage out loud to the class, conducting think alouds at each stopping point. So let's say we're reading a passage about the Nile River. As I'm reading it to the class, I might say something like, I'm trying to identify the main idea of this passage. I'm trying to figure out what this passage is mostly about. I see that the Nile River comes up a lot. I think what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll underline every time the Nile River shows up in the passage. You kind of go through it. Okay, I've already underlined it. I found it's mentioned 3 times here. It's gotta be the main idea. And then you can kind of build in what the details around it are about. And then that's when you would model how you would move on to finding the most important details in the text. So narrating how you might reread those sentences that feature the main idea, focusing on the details. So maybe you're reading and there are several mentions of how the Nile River was important for agriculture in ancient Egypt. You can then kind of narrate for the students. This paragraph is about the Nile River and how it benefited ancient Egyptian agriculture. This is an example of the anchor chart. So get the gist, it presents as a very simple, straightforward activity. Just identifying what the section is mostly about and then what are the most important things to know. Then the students would move on to their independent practice. So students would read passages with a partner using the get the gist strategy. You would provide partner cue cards for students to use while reading. Students would write main idea statements together, and then you as the teacher provide feedback on those main idea statements. So this is an example of the cue cards. So we have partner A and partner B. So partner A is asking the questions, who or what is this section about? And then partner B is given a sentence starter, and it moves on like that to help them discuss the text that they've read. So to incorporate technology, we are going to go to Padlet.com. We'll use Padlet as a platform for posting main idea statements. This is where teachers and peers can provide feedback and comments. It also allows alternative ways to post. So if you want to give your students the option to share the main idea in a different way, maybe they can make a video or they can upload an audio recording of it. And we're gonna skip the video tutorial and we'll go through it together. So when you go to Padlet.com, you will hit the login button. You will be able to log in with Google using your school account. Now for me, it shows up that I have an account on Padlet.com and on Woodward Academy's platform. I think I saved all my stuff on the Padlet.com one though. So how you would make a Padlet, you just hit this pink button in the top corner. And then you can choose like a different way that you want to present it. What I did was the bulletin board. I like that one the best. And then right away it kind of shows you your settings and all the different options. In order to change the title, you go to open the Padlet settings. So maybe this would be our Get the Gist log for April 3rd. You can give instructions, so something like post your main idea statements here. And then you can change some of the, things that just sort of show up. Like the color, the aesthetics, as I was trying to say, the aesthetics, the color, the font, the layout. You can group posts by section, which is kind of a cool feature. So if you had students working in discussion groups, this could be where group 1 posts their work, where group 2 posts their work, or you could have it post where it's all kind of mixed together. So I'm going to show you the one that I had already done. There. So this is the one that I made before. That was one divided by section. Here it is. So this little plus sign would show up for students, and this is where they can type their main idea statement. So I drafted a sample one, and then I went in and I posted my feedback. So I posted, great work, what is the connection between Kemet and the Nile River exactly? Maybe include some more detail. You could also allow students to provide feedback. So you could have students, assign them to read a certain amount of main idea statements and provide some sort of comment or feedback after reading. In order to, comments are not automatically on though. So in order to turn those on, you do need to go to settings. And let me go to the other one that we were just working on. So you do need to go to settings and you need to, here, turn it on right here, under engagement. And then there's also a moderation button, so,
You see
so
it.
there's,
You see it before they post it, or
Yes.
you see it before it gets posted?
yes, there's an auto moderation feature, so if it says something inappropriate in it, that's automatically on. If you're not worried about it, you would hit none. If you would like more control, you would go to manual, and that's where you're able to, say, yeah, we're not gonna post that one for the class. Trying to remember what else. Oh, and then in order to share it with your students, if you go to the settings, then you hit share. You can make the link private or secret. This is where you would copy the link. You can also get a QR code. Our students with the iPads, they love to scan a QR code anytime they can. So you can get it this way. It says here you can download it. I was also able to just right click and copy and paste it on a slide you'll see in a little while. So that is the way that you can use Get the Gist with Padlet. Do you have any questions about Get the Gist or any questions about Padlet?
Great way to use it, great way, yeah.
Okay. So next we are going to wrap up. And then where'd the button go that I need? Here we go. So for the exit ticket, I made a Padlet. There's a QR code. Let me. Okay, because this isn't a Google slide. I'll share the link with you guys in just a second. I can email it to you. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go onto Padlet and comment what strategy you'd like to apply. And then I would like for you to maybe go on to Newsela or ReadWorks and actually find an article that's relevant in your class right now that you might like to apply, and we'll kind of talk about that. So let me get the link to you all. I'll send it out to you all right now. so if you're not a QR code person, which I know I'm not when I'm working on a laptop, the link is now in your email. So I'm gonna go back to Padlet and I'm gonna open up the,
I don't have a link.
Yeah.
It's slow. It's not. Sometimes it hits
I'll
my
see if it sends. I can send it again. It did send looking kind of funny. Oh, yeah, it sent as like a,
Nope, it just showed up.
yeah, but it's not able to be clicked. Here, I can do it this way. Sorry about that.
Well, we could copy and paste it now.
I'm doing it on my phone.
Yeah, I didn't bring my phone.
Here. Sorry about that. The link sent as an image, not a hyperlink, but now you've got it. Oh, yeah. And go back to the, where's the refresh? I should refresh the screen, so I just sent the link, the workable one. Nice.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, it just came through for you,
Does-
Virginia? There we go.
Yeah, it's a little slow.
All right.
A question for
Yeah.
you. How do you think these ideas apply by grade level? Do you see it working? I mean, their Lexile gives you opportunities to put third grade, fourth grade. So do you see it as strategies for all ages?
Yeah, I mean, certainly once if you're still working on, phonics, decoding and things like that, you're mastering that before you get to reading comprehension. But I mean, I would say that you could certainly do this with, as young as third grade, if you're reading maybe like an informational picture book about a topic, and applying it that way. With the technology, I do think it's probably harder to apply it with younger grades though.
Okay, good.
Good questions. Yeah, a couple of the examples in the studies that I read featured like younger elementary all the way up to high school. One of the ones I read about TRAP featured a group of students with intellectual disabilities. So everything I wanted to look into addressed some aspect of disability since we work with students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and all those learning disabilities.
Yeah.
ADHD.
Makes sense.
Plan together to use TRAP and social studies. Share the eclipse experience. And that'd be great because they're gonna get some background knowledge on solar eclipses when they, put on the glasses and look at them. Hopefully, maybe read an article about the importance of putting on the glasses before.
Yeah, and from the newsletter, the news, ELA, I found an article that they can actually use that and read that in class
Perfect.
with a quiz attached.
And I just
Here's
found
your sub plans, right?
an article on the democracy of ancient Athens, which is exactly what we're studying in social studies right now.
Yeah, and I bet it's got those vocab words that, they're familiar with, but maybe need to understand it in context. Great strategies for all subjects. Is there anything, I know it's so tricky to try to apply this stuff to math, but does
Yeah,
anything
and
come to
that
mind?
was my question in my head. I'm like,
Yeah.
how would I tie this into math unless I wanted them to learn like the history of Pythagorean theorem or something like,
Word problem.
yeah. But you could use, like this Padlet in kind of time, like how to solve, we're doing proportions right now, how to solve, using the steps to solve proportions.
Explain.
And put examples and kind of use it as notes and then have them come up with their own proportions, talk us through.
Yeah.
Because if they can explain it, then you know that they know it.
I also
This could be
think
like a way to do that.
I also think math
Multi-step.
has its own sort of text structure where it's like looking for what that math action is telling you to do. So it's not quite as in depth as reading an article or a textbook, but there is still some structural analysis or some like author's purpose in there when it comes to word problems.
Yeah.
Any other
Well, I
questions?
think like if you're using any of these strategies, it's gonna increase their comprehension, so with that, the math word problems, their level of comprehension of those would increase as well.
That too. The article that I read, one of the articles I read about SRSD featured strategies in each subject area. So I just focused on what we could do with reading, but there is also a specific mention or like a specific like vignette of a teacher using it in math, science, social studies, and in writing too.
Yeah.
So there are definitely, there can be some kind of like trickle through with these strategies.
Great for tutoring.
Yeah, definitely.
Really good tutoring.
Any other questions or feedback?
Just
Great
pass
job.
along- Yeah, pass along
Very
this
informative.
presentation to all of us, please.
I will.
Love the resources.
I do too.
All right, well, thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well done.